Hi, I'm Holly, and I'm the primary teacher and author here at Study with Friends. My education is from a Reformed theological seminary, so you'll see that come through as we teach and study together. But on occasion, I'll introduce concepts from other doctrines when I think they shed light on the material, just so that we can have a well-rounded understanding of lots of different perspectives on the text. We strongly believe that you should know and understand who's teaching you the Bible. And so you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. We're just really glad you're here.
I've had to learn in being around a lot of confident people and a lot of confident leaders, because that's like a whole other level of confidence. I've had to learn that confidence and strength in your speech doesn't equal hatred. It doesn't have to equal hatred, and it doesn't have to equal defense. Some people in their flesh turn it that way, and as a kid, kind of similar to whenever you had that epiphany, I grew up thinking I had to have an answer to everything.
Yes.
Kind of what we've already spoken about, and I've mentioned this before. I was saved out of that. I accepted Christ fully, purely in my heart, from a lack of understanding the Bible, because I was like, well, Lord, and it was so internal too, because it was kind of like on the playground. I was talking with my little kid friends, when I was a little kid, and then they said something that their parents, probably fed them, and I was like, that's completely false, but I don't know how to tell you what's truth. Aww. And so I went to the side of my playground and was like, Lord, if I don't know you personally, because I can't speak your word, I want to know you. And it was like a cool experience. But
that's adorable.
Yeah. But through that though, I've had to learn, because even Christ is like this, you see so many examples in the Gospels, and the Father's like this too, just in the Old Testament. But I'll focus on Christ for a minute. He was bold. Yeah. He flipped the tables in the tabernacle for a reason. He was passionate, kind of how you talk about how your daughters are passionate in what they believe in. He was like the epitome of passionate, and yet he always spoke the truth in love. Yeah. And he always spoke in a way that people were both offended, but offended in the best way, because their initial offense probed them to ask more questions. And he was always love, and so over time I've had to learn that, because one of the things that I love about my immediate family, my parents, and then my sister as well, which now she's 13, so she's at this perfect age where she's coming into her own and learning how to have her own opinion, and well, she's always had her own opinion, but learning how to have articulating her opinion. Yes. And it's beautiful. But one of the things I love about our immediate family, the four of us, is I am confident that they speak the truth in love, but I come from a family where the gift of mercy is not very prominent in the three of them, yet it's super prominent in me. And so they are the ones that, are very bold, very outspoken in their faith, even my sister. And so over time you learn, how to hear what they're saying and think, okay, let me see your heart behind that. And it goes back, that very reflection goes back to what you originally said, which I love. It was so nourishing to me, which was how it doesn't have to be a make or break. I'm paraphrasing what you said, because I don't remember what you said exactly, but that it really is relationally fueled, kind of how you said to her, how, you definitely follow up text, you definitely continue the conversation. But I also, and sorry, I have a lot of thoughts on I was just
I want to hear a really quick reflection on what you're saying. I think it's because we live in an instant gratification society. Yeah. We want to get in and get out. We want to drive through your salvation experience. Let me just transactionally exchange my money for your fries, and then I walk away. Right. That we're not as used to sticking around in patience and faith and love, and not worrying about, did it happen the first 17 times I spent time with you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're just not doing that. And that's our downfall. And it is the downfall of our ability to do this work. Because if I only think of it as a transactional thing, you say something, I give you truth back, you didn't take it, the transaction is voided, and we both go on our lives You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think the root of the problem.
Well, because a lot of the root of the problem is self-focus,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, the enemy, I obviously despise the enemy, but the one thing that unfortunately he is good at is enticing our flesh to focus more on ourselves than who we're actually talking to. I think of your example of how, you know, you struggle with talking to your friend that has the Buddha statue, and because I so get what you're talking about. I've had so many friends, especially Christian friends, weirdly enough, that they wouldn't probably recognize and actively say, yeah, I'm pluralistic in my, you know, all gods lead to heaven, but yet their actions reflect that, you know, and especially the younger, I've noticed in millennials and also Gen Z generation, they kind of just let the first thing and maybe it comes with age, I don't know, but the first thing that they think kind of just flies out of their mouth immediately, and they have to learn, whether it's the hard way or maybe a reflective way, which is the better, that your words have weight, you know? And so going back to what you're talking about, it can be so easy. And because I've done this myself so many times, it can be so easy to, in those circumstances, let the fear of self-focus hold you back. And this is just another perspective. Obviously, I don't know if you do this, but I know I have struggled with doing this, where my fear of wanting to say something is really at a root cause, me just hyper focusing on, okay, I need to make sure that I do this, and I need to make sure that I get this right. And we kind of already talked about that, you know.
No, but I like that you're putting a finer point on it, because it's really self-focused.
Yeah. And people don't recognize that, or they're not willing to admit it.
Or able to stop it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another thing. Well, and too, society does perpetuate that. You know, one of the biggest things that I don't know if you guys remember that that bumper sticker that came out years ago, the coexist bumper sticker. I personally detest it, and the reason why is because the underlying agenda
message
behind it is this idea of tolerance, where it kind of goes into the pluralistic mindset of all gods point to heaven, all gods whatever. And while yes, the Lord can work all things together for good, and he's the mastermind, obviously, because he created all of it. He's the mastermind of using any background to bring you back to focus on him if you're willing. I don't, you know, in my just passion for the Lord, you know, I remember looking at that as a kid, and even growing up with that idea of tolerance, and just thinking that is so dangerous to go down that road, because it does diminish your personal or it diminishes the idea of tolerance, diminishes your confidence in wanting to speak out. However, in purity, right? Because even a lot of things that the enemy likes to do, it's just a counterfeit of what God has created in purity. In purity, what is tolerance? Tolerance is God's love in being willing to listen, like you said, being willing to actually listen to what the person is saying, and then point them to truth, you know, and then also reflect and say, okay, is what you're saying maybe revealing some things that I'm doing in my flesh and I didn't even realize, you know? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you said a lot.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I capture as much of it as I can. I'm going to start with the last thing, because I think you're right that Carol teased that out. Maybe you weren't thinking of it in the same way of tolerance, intolerance, which is a whole nother conversation about what that really means. But that idea of acceptance, let's maybe say that, like, okay, I don't have to accept what you believe to accept you as a person, which of course we agree with. It's twisted a little right now in our culture, but I'm going to leave that lie right there. The difference is that we have become a people who actually, everybody's in a bubble now. like you sit in an echo chamber. We watch the news, that's an echo chamber. Our social media feeds us an echo chamber. There's no question anymore about the social media algorithms and how that's working. And so our life feeds us only what we already think about the world. And it makes us even more concerned about bridging that divide because we're fearful about what could happen, as we try to cross that bridge or ask someone to come and cross it with us. See, these are, I actually, while we were talking, I was like, maybe this first session is just about some of the things we're facing. Because I really do want to talk about the Bible and the Bible being truth, but this is a really rich conversation about all of the challenges that we're facing and how we cope with those. And so I don't want it to just be, four girls chatting around a table. So I want to keep bringing it back to there are real, tangible, usable ways for us to be equipped in coping. And I choose these words carefully. I don't want to say defend. I don't even want to say answer, because that implies that I am right and I have the answer. Right. And there's a flesh in there that I would prefer to stay away from. Because I'm no different. I mean, I told you it was pride motivated that I didn't want to be made a fool of when people in my family were like, did you know there were 94 gospels? How do you know the 4 gospels you have? I was like, there are how many? What now? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so it was pride motivated. So pride is my enemy when I come to apologetics, because it's about being right, being smart, being able to outwit. Here's the other problem. These atheists in my family, they're doctors. They're like one of my uncle, who has since passed away, literally a rocket scientist. Like he's on NASA, worked for NASA. Wow. And like he was part of the team that found the hole in the ozone. Super smart people. Wow. So it's not just about it's about intellectual prowess.
Oh, yes.
And being able to capture and master your words and your thoughts and your concepts, your philosophies in such a way that it shuts down the other side, where you're like, I really don't know what to say to that. Yeah. You've really presented something that is fully orbed and super convincing. So even in my heart, I know that the resurrection is real. You've made some very convincing arguments. I need to be able to make those as well. Again, not arguments. So I'm going to say this. This is what I call, I think, the secret sauce. And I'm changing it. I used to call it one simple tool. But I'm going to change it because I think it's really helpful for us to have little nuggets that we can take away. And my approach, the approach that I will teach from this chair, the approach that I will engender when I have the opportunity platformed by this ministry, is this: ask better questions.
That's good.
Because if you ask me a question and I feel A, pressured to have the right answer, B, pressured to be right, prideful, fearful, all of that gets wound up in the need to provide an answer. Yeah. But if I can learn how to ask a better question, I can take that pressure off myself and keep the conversation going. Because that's the goal. Yeah. The goal is that we let go of this one and done transactional drive-through apologetics experience. I just came up with that today, by the way, that drive-through thing. But I'm liking it. I may sit with that. I may sit in that for a while.
That's good.
Trademark. You see what I
right? Give you this. Give me that.
Give me that. And get out.
Done.
Yeah, it's just instant gratification. All the things that we've been talking about. But I will even say the root of that, I think, is that I'm going to say a criticism. I love the church. I love the church. I love the body of Christ. Yeah. But one thing I think that we're experiencing pathology in is transactional Christianity. We go to Sunday, we want to get a thing and go. And so I think it's pervasive and certainly makes sense that we would apply that to the way that we live out our Christianity, that we're getting transactional in our go in, worship, feel good, like the music, love the pastor, got a moment, got a word. I need a word, right? What if it's not about what you need?
Oh,
What if
that's
it's
so
about
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
service, literally service to the Lord, worship service? Whole nother conversation for another day. But I do
Right.
think that that's in the mix as we think about how we live out our Christian experience, what we're actually embodying when we have our Christian experience. How could it be much different? So there's a lot of root causes. I think I'm certainly not a psychologist. I'm not going to get to the bottom of all those, but I can say this. Ask better questions works. Here's a great example. Just came up yesterday with me in my real life. I don't really think that Jonah was swallowed by a real whale. Do you really believe that? Tell me before I tell you how I cope with that. How does that make you feel when someone says, do you really believe that? Tell me. Don't think
Foolish.
about it. Mm-hmm.
Definitely can. It makes me reflect. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I keep saying
A
that
little
word, but
attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking, do we?
I'm asking, how do you feel when
Yeah.
if someone says a question like that? What is the first thing
Well, in
that,
that tone, definitely, possibly.
and
Attack,
have you
yeah.
experienced that? Am I stretching what you've experienced? Like, this is I'm giving you examples from my real life. Do you really believe that? How could you really believe that?
So yes, I to answer your question, you get defensive because you don't have there isn't a simple answer. I mean, some of these things you just have by faith that you get that aha moment, like you said, where you say, I believe this, and those hard to answer questions, you just by faith say, I don't know, but by faith I trust it because I don't want to.
But you feel a little on the back foot.
Yes,
you feel
that's
a little
an
bit- okay.
excellent way to say
So
it. Yes.
so here's what I want to say. And I heard you even say I don't know if I have the right answer. So I just want us to really prayerfully adopt a new mindset. I don't have to have the answer here. That's the first thing you got to think to yourself. I don't have to have the answer. I just have to have a better question that forces them to think about their mindset instead of them coming. I know what I believe. I'm not going to be shaken in what I believe. But if I'm given this opportunity, what I want to do, what I believe I'm called to do, what I believe Christians are called to do is to witness, right? That's what we know we want to do in that moment. Sometimes witnessing is better done in silence, in quiet, in reflection. And so if you think about it that way, if you think about ask better questions, now you don't have to have the answer to every question, creation, Jonah, whatever. Now you just have to have a category of really good questions. Categories. So here's what I would say. You ready? You so excited? Here's what I did say. That is such an interesting question you're asking me. There's a couple ways I could go. I didn't do this yesterday, but the one way I could go is, why do you ask me that question? For me, that was something I developed during, and we're not going to get into politics, but during the time in our country's history when gay marriage was a real debate. And I'm very openly Christian, so people who are not Christians would say to me, where do you fall on this issue? Sometimes you have to ask, why do you ask me that question? To find out the truth of the matter, which is this heart open to talking to you and being in relationship, or is this a trap?
Right.
And Jesus said to his disciples, why are you arguing with them?
Yeah.
You have to know when it's a trap. And listen, Jesus was a master of spinning the trap around.
Right,
Yeah. The Pharisees tried to trap him a lot. Maybe we will get to that prowess and maybe we won't. We shouldn't aspire to that prowess because that's Christ and he's going to be always more intellectually savvy and better at all of that. But what we can aspire to is understanding the question and the questioner so that we can respond properly, because allowing ourselves to fall into a trap, nobody wins. So one of the questions I would ask is, why do you ask me that question? So that was something I developed during the time when that whole conversation about gay marriage came up. And that's a whole nother, again, we're spinning off a lot of potential series here. But the response that I said yesterday was, just like this. I said, so that is a very interesting question. And I'm wondering if we could ponder a different one that might be better together. And that is, do we believe that supernatural things can happen? Because Jonah falls under that category.
Right.
I don't have to defend Jonah and the whale. Very smart people, well-churched people believe both sides of that. It's a non-essential. But what is not a non-essential is the fact that our God is the creator God and has sovereignty over his creation, which means that he can perform supernatural things. By the way, that covers miracles,
Right.
that covers. So do you understand that I've asked a better question that actually gives us the opening instead of a conversation stopper where I'm like, well, yes, I believe that it could. A lot of times I would also say, if I were pressed to answer, I would say, it doesn't really matter to me that much, if I'm being honest with you, if he was swallowed by a literal whale or not. What matters to me is why God told that story in the Bible. Why is it in there? And what's the rest of the context around that story? And what am I supposed to learn about my faith and about my God and the nature of man and the nature of God because of that story? So to me, who really cares?
Yeah.
And that puts them on the back foot too, because they're like, wait a minute, you didn't fall in my trap, or you didn't answer that in a way that I expected you to answer it by saying, who really cares? Like, I don't think most people expect you to not take that hill.
Yeah.
But you don't have to take every hill. And so do you see what I mean by asking a better question? Because then it was like, oh, then they were pausing. And like, okay, that is a really good question. And we just left it. I was like, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's think about that together. I would love to ponder that with you. Because I also have all the toolbox on naturalism versus, so if we go down that road, I know how I will respond or the questions that I will continue to ask. The truth is, it's been my experience that by asking questions, I can lead you to a place much more easily than trying to give you answers.